Hello, my name is Will Lindis, and this is the Movie Bears Podcast. We're normally a trio of husky, hairy, huggable homos who review movies, both new and old. But this week, we're one man down. That's right.
One bear down.
Yeah, one bear down. One bear down. Yeah, that's right. Brad Harris isn't here with us this week. He's got a work commitment. He's with us in our hearts, though. Mm-hmm. But you know who is here with me? That's my partner in crime, Jim Pugliafico.
I'm here. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Tormund Lindis.
Oh, that's yeah. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, you can see that I've got this bright maroon beard. Normally, it's like a deep brown. For those listening on iTunes or Spotify or any of those, you may be wondering what the hell he meant by that. But yeah, it's I dyed my beard temporarily. Red for the evening just to kind of see how it goes.
It looks good on you.
Well, thank you. I used to when I was a younger man and had hair on top of my head and not just on my chin. I used to love like dyeing it like different colors. You know, I'd do like black or red or blonde. Like I never went like blue or green or anything too crazy. But and now that I'm a bit older man and those days are well beyond me, thought it'd be fun just to sort of revisit it here on the face.
Yeah, like I said Tormund in a reference to Game of Thrones, which of course is right now is huge news because we're in the we're not going to give spoilers or anything, but we're in the midst of the final season. So on social media, there's tons and tons of talk about the different characters, and one of those characters is I don't know the full name. I know him by it's Tormund something, right?
That's what I know.
Yeah. He's like a wildling, and he's got a big old red beard, and that's exactly what Will's reminded me of. So, but yeah, so I know we got a lot going on in the world of pop culture, social media right now. We've got Game of Thrones in the midst of its last season. We're now down to like 4 episodes remaining in the entire show. And then this week, and we'll be talking about this next week, we've got the Avengers Endgame movie that's right now. I mean, it opens this weekend, but some people have seen it. You know, film critics and press and so forth have gotten into special screenings. And so social media is kind of a buzz right now with
the internet is dark and full of spoilers.
Yes, it is.
It's a dangerous minefield out there right now, right? Because everyone's doing by everyone, I guess it's the select few people that have had a chance to view like early screenings or press screenings of Avengers Endgame. And of course, we'll be back very soon, probably sometime next week, to talk about it in full detail. But there's a lot of people who just got out of the screenings today as we're recording it on Tuesday, the 23rd of April. And they are putting their full thoughts out there on Twitter. So far, no spoilers. It looks like it's pretty clean, what I've been seeing. But I am seeing a lot of people who are sort of planting their flag now on, this is my critical opinion. Oh, here's my hot take. I'll be interested in seeing how much those start to verge towards spoiler territory as we get closer to the weekend, as people start to like maybe push other people off of their little part of the mountain and try to say, no, this is my hot take, and I'll prove it by expanding on it. I don't know. What do you think, Jim? Should people be off internet this week?
Some people have chosen to do that. We've got some friends that have like said, hey, I'm just kind of going to go dark for a couple of days until I get to see it this weekend. And I don't blame them, because I mean, this is a huge movie opening, right? And a lot of people are going to see this, as we all saw when tickets went on sale and people tried to buy opening night tickets, and it crashed the AMC and Cinemark and all the movie theaters, ticket servers. So the demand was high. So tons and tons of people. I also heard on the news this week that today, I think, that some movie theaters are going to be having screenings of this around the clock. Like the movie theaters are not closing. And so this weekend, I think they're going to go, like with some of them, and I don't know which chains, are going to go around the clock, meaning they're going to have extra staff on. So be kind to your refreshment servers and popcorn scoopers and people who clean the auditoriums and stuff. It's going to be a rough weekend for those people.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you are in a movie that has full service refreshments like Alamo Drafthouse, where I'm going to be seeing one of the screenings now. These are servers who are going to be walking around during all of the spoilery bits on especially opening night. They're going to get spoiled so that they can serve you beer and serve you food. They're not going to get the luxury of having, going into it fresh. So tip super well, be super kind to those people. They're putting up with a lot of bullshit from a lot of people, not just the servers. The people have to clean up afterwards. Right. The people that are doing ticket collections, the people that are running the lobbies and the concession stands. Like it's always a lot of work for not a lot of pay to do a lot of these things. And then add to the fact that everyone's coming into this with like heightened emotions, and some of those are going to spill over negatively to their interactions with others. Just don't be a jerk, guys. Everyone be cool.
But I don't know, Will, what's your excitement level going into the Avengers Endgame movie this weekend? I mean, we're all going to be seeing it this weekend. So yes, people who are listening and, either live or on what Brad would call the tape delay, where the next show that comes out, the next live show and the next podcast drop is going to be pretty much all Avengers Endgame. So get ready for that. It's going to be a big deal. Your excitement level is probably very high.
Through the roof. I mean, this is a huge accomplishment. This is a franchise that is 21 movies deep now, I believe. And at least in my estimation, they've not made a bad one yet. And they're capping off this 21 run of anywhere from good to great movies with this giant capstone cultural event that's 11 years in the making now. It's been since 2008 when Iron Man came out. So this is a huge deal. Wow. We haven't seen storytelling done. We've seen serialized storytelling. Think like the Harry Potter series. We have, of course, Star Wars, which was, over a longer period of time, but done in little trilogy installments. But we haven't seen anything that's quite this ambitious and quite this interconnected ever done. And it's been this crazy experiment that everybody, DC, Universal with the Universal Monsters, the Fast and the Furious, the horror movie franchise that we're going to be talking about later this episode. Everyone's trying to copy this this formula, but I think kind of Marvel's the only one that really did it well, and they were also the ones who did it. I don't want to say necessarily first, but they're the ones that sort of got ahead of the pack on this. I'm seeing it 3 times actually this weekend.
Holy shit.
I got tickets. We were going to go see it on Friday night. We have a weekend trip to Dallas, and then I was going to see it again on Monday. And then earlier today, I won tickets to see it on Thursday as well. Oh, so I'm just okay, sure. I'll see it a 3rd time. I'm cool.
Hey, Will, did you win for that? What was it? You had an end game. You had to do an end game. What do you expect to see? Was it an Alamo thing? Because your tweet was pretty awesome.
Yeah, Alamo Drafthouse did a thing where they're like, "What is your prediction? What's your what do you hope to see? What's the plausible or implausible thing that could happen in this movie?" So I'm like, "Sure, I'll put my tweet out there." And yeah, they picked mine, retweeted it, and
nice.
So I
didn't see that they picked it, but congratulations, that was pretty awesome. I'm like, I was reading through them, and I'm like, "Oh, Will's is the best one so far."
Well, thank you. I'm hoping I think it was a random draw, but at the same time, I think that I did feel pretty proud of mine afterwards.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Anyway, so check out Will's Twitter feed if you want to see that one.
Yeah, I've got 9 likes so far, and so if one of my listeners, if one of my listeners can push that up to 10, I will feel like absolute hot shit. So make that happen, everyone.
It's the closest he's gotten to going viral yet.
Yeah. Make it happen. No, the closest I got to going viral is I post if you post a hot take on Survivor finale night.
Oh,
your shit will blow up all morning long. I ended up with 200 or something comments on a thing that night. oh gosh, who was it? I think Ben Dreyfuss during when
Okay.
a few seasons back. So that's tip if you want to artificially inflate your sense of self-worth via social media. Tweet, tweet shitty things about reality television.
Exactly.
But we're here not just to talk about Avengers. We're also here to review a movie that came out this last weekend and is something that we're very excited to keep in the public mind and eye for the next few days until Avengers just completely consumes everything.
Yeah.
So here we go with our review of The Curse of La Llorona. So, for those of you that are new to the show, we always spend a few minutes of our program discussing each film spoiler-free before we give the heads up and we dive right into Spoiler Pound Town. The Curse of La Llorona is a movie that was one of the offerings at this year's South by Southwest, which Brad, Jim, and I were very, very, very fortunate to be able to cover for the Movie Bears podcast this year. Of course, Curse of La Llorona is now out in theaters. Everyone can go see it right now. Again, until Avengers Endgame sucks up all of your time and money. But since it is out in theaters now, Jim, can you let our listeners know a little bit about what The Curse of La Llorona is even about and how you felt about the film?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I'm happy to. The Curse of La Llorona is a song that, a song. It's, and I'll get to the song in a minute. It's a movie. It's a horror movie. And I'll read the IMDb summary. Ignoring the eerie warning of a troubled mother suspected of child endangerment, a social worker and her own small kids are soon drawn into a frightening supernatural realm. So this is a supernatural type of horror movie. It's not definitely not a slasher movie, but it's one of those kind of scary, creepy, ghosty kind of films that we've seen over the last few years, and we'll get to that a little bit. This one's directed by Michael Chaves, or Chavez, I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it, but who doesn't have that many credits yet to his name, but this one is executive produced by James Wan, I think. Produced or executive produced. And we know James Wan is a big figure right now in the world of, well, of course, he came from the Fast and Furious movies. He's now in doing the Conjuring movies and a lot of these horror movies. And so his name is attached. And it's good to see that he's kind of drawing in maybe some new directing talent with some of these movies. And that's a good thing to see. As far as who's in this movie, Linda Cardellini is in this movie. She plays Anna, the mother in this one, the young mother. We see a couple of small kids. Raymond Cruz is in this. He plays a character called Raphael, who, and you may recognize Raymond Cruz if you're a fan of Breaking Bad. He played Tuco Salamanca in Breaking Bad, and he was good to see in this movie. This one also has a few others in here. I'm trying to remember who the father was, the priest was. Tony Amendola. He's Father Perez. We've seen his face before. So it's a pretty small cast. So my impressions of this movie, let's see. I didn't expect much of this movie. Went into it kind of lukewarm on this horror movie. I had seen the trailer and it just didn't really catch me. So I went into it very neutral with very low expectations, and I walked out of it actually kind of liking it more than I thought I would. This movie is not, this movie is not a masterpiece. I don't think it's a great movie, but I think it's a very competent, take on this movie that this kind of movie that we've seen so much of in the last few years. And it even did some interesting things with some of the characters and motivations that we'll talk about a little bit more in spoilers, specifically with regard to the Raphael character. I thought the performances were really good. It managed to inject a little bit of humor into the movie, which I thought was kind of just, that can be a shaky thing with these horror movies. If you try to put too much humor in, it becomes almost like a farce, a slapstick farce. And, if you don't try to put any humor in, then that's fine. But then you're just relying on your horror chops. And this movie I thought mixed it up fairly well. So I actually enjoyed this movie more than I thought I would. I'm not going to go singing its praises all over the place, but yeah, I thought this was a competent, like mainstream, supernatural horror movie. And I want to talk about some surprises that surprised me in this movie. And Will, you kind of hinted on it a little bit. Maybe we'll get to it now. And when you talk about it or in spoilers, it was kind of a surprise to me. So I don't know if we want to keep it a surprise for other people seeing it. But go ahead. What were your impressions, Will?
Yeah. So I don't think it's any big secret to listeners of the show that while I'm a huge horror fan, I've not super been down with the whole Conjuring verse, which is I know what you're getting like I know that's the point. Like this shares this is okay to discuss. It shares a character with those other films. Like he's the Father Perez characters in those other films.
And a little more than that, but we'll talk about
that. Right. But it's part of that whole very loosely tied to that style of supernatural horror that comes from just everything that's been sort of since Insidious, through the Conjuring, through the Annabelle movies, to the Nun, and even those aren't all connected necessarily in lore. They're all connected sort of spiritually, pun intended.
Yeah.
And this one is as well. And I've had a problem with a lot of those because I feel like there's large sections of these movies that substitute horror for jump scares. And I think a jump scare is, I'm not one of those people that's nose in the air, I hate jump scares. But I do think that when used poorly, they actually deflate tension instead of ratcheting it up.
Right.
So I went into this one already, I don't know, maybe a little less on board than I would have been for any other horror film. And I walked away from this one with a more positive reaction than I was expecting. I don't want to overinflate that and say that I loved this movie, go rush out and see this one right away. But I think that this one does some things effectively that some of those other ones that I mentioned do not. I think this one also falls into some of those same traps as well. So it's, there's some good and there's some bad here. What I can say is very good is Linda Cardellini is absolutely stellar in this main role here. I think that she has to pull off this role of this woman who is dealing with the fact that there's something coming for her children and having to deal with both the skepticism of it and then the now I get it of it and the horror of it and the trying to get
the fear
of it, all of that stuff. There's a lot of things that she has to carry on her shoulders, and she carries them all very well. She's an absolute pro. You mentioned Raymond Cruz, and I'll be honest, thank you for mentioning him as Tuco, because I walked through that entire movie going I know this dude from something. I know him from something, and I can't place it. You're absolutely right. Yeah, he was really good in this as well.
Brad picked it up right away. As soon as he saw the character, he leads over. He says, "Tuco."
I mean, good job, Brad.
Yes.
It was it was bugging me all through the movie, just where I don't know him from. I know him from something. Now, all that said, I think that there are some, there are some places where the characters make decisions that aren't really based on character motivations. They're sort of based on, we have to make things worse for the characters. So people do some boneheaded things that feel very out of character and sort of out of the moment. And, I again, some of those are part of the horror movie genre, and you can't clock those too much, but at the same time, they do stick out when you otherwise like the characters. And there are some jump scares through this movie that feel very much made for the trailer and not for not necessarily for the moment itself. And so those stick out, and I think that those feel very, very much false notes. I wish this movie had stuck to a more under the skin subversive style of tension building, which it sort of does in places, and sort of skipped the whole like, okay, now all of a sudden there's like a woman in bad ghost makeup screaming at me to make the terror, and there's way too much of that. But mixed bag. I think people are going to ultimately like this one. Or let me rephrase that. I think people who are fans of this franchise have the potential to like this one quite a bit. I do wonder though if it's going to be too much in the middle for people to really relate to it. I think people that really like that, the Nun and the Annabella and stuff like that, may think that this one is too slow. And I think fans that are, people that are more fans of like atmospheric horror are going to say that there's too many jump scares. So I almost wonder if this one was too much of a middle ground to really find an audience. But it's a right down the middle for me. I maybe the mildest recommendation possible, or a possibly skip it. I don't know. I have a hard time feeling like really passionate one way or the other on this one.
Yeah, and I think that's fair enough. That's the kind of movie this is. I think I'm just slightly more positive than you on this because, I like that. I like that sensation when I go into a movie with like low or no expectations, and it kind of it kind of exceeds those expectations for me. Then I feel like, hey, that was worth it. That I enjoyed that time at the movies. One of the things that I want to mention about this movie, you mentioned the jump scares. This movie tries to do as much as it can with the editing. Editing is really key in some of these horror movies, both to set the tension and to land the hook when you want a big scare. And this movie, you could kind of see the lack of budget in this movie a little bit, in terms of they had to do a lot with editing. They had to kind of lean into the editing a little bit to kind of amp up the scares, because let me put it this way, the evil character in this movie, let's just say that, it didn't really stand out from other movies that we've seen, right? And I don't want to get too much into spoilers because it's kind of a reveal in the movie a little bit, but it didn't seem to like stand out or exceed anything else that we've seen. Like, oh great, another scary creature that's coming out of the dark corner or whatever. And I think that kind of hurts this movie a little bit, in that the villain is pretty standard, I guess. And I talked about the editing. Linda Cardellini was great. She was far and away, I think, the best thing about this movie. And the kid actors I thought were pretty good too. You know me, I'm pretty tough on kid actors. I thought the kid actors here,
you're brutal to kids. Yeah.
I thought the kid actors here did a pretty good job. They weren't like over the top precocious. This movie deals with kids in peril most of the movie, and I thought that they evoked that feeling of being, terrified very well, without coming across too fake. But I will say that I did like the period sensibility of this movie. This movie was set like in the 70s, I think, and it definitely felt like that for me. In terms of its set design and the way it pulled that off, I thought was really well. It felt like a family living in the 70s. And as we know, that universe, that universe that this movie is set in kind of all takes place around that same time, that 70s, early 80s time frame. And it's funny because when the movie starts, I'm like, why is this movie set in the 70s? Like, why? And I didn't understand. And we'll get into more in spoilers. The movie actually surprised me. But so I wanted to say that I really dug the art design or set design of this movie as well. I just, the creature design I thought was a little, like I said, standard and didn't really do much for me.
Yeah, 100% echoed. Like, there are some legit good, like, especially for not a first-time director, but a guy who doesn't have like a ton of credits under his belt.
Not feature,
This is a guy who it seems like he worked very well with his production team. He worked very well with his cinematographer. He worked very good with his editors, color correction, just everyone that's responsible for just kind of the look and texture of this movie. Like everything came together to make something that looked and felt really good. There's some shots in here, kind of especially towards the end, where I was really taken aback by just how much this looked like a cleaned up version of what might be like a straight from the 70s supernatural horror flick. And so I like that quite a bit. I like the look and the feel of it. And it's probably no surprise that because of that tie, like this is a guy who is going to be tapped for more of this type of film. It looks like he's also going to be doing the
Conjuring 3.
The Conjuring 3, yeah. So they're definitely grooming another guy to do this type of film. And, you know, based on what we've seen from that whole sphere of things, you know, definitely they could do a lot worse than this guy who is definitely cutting his teeth in all the right ways. Right there with you, though, the monster is the weakest part, from the scares to the look, to the effects on it. Like the effects looked not bad. Like, I mean, there was obviously some money put into them, but some of the times where she would appear on screen and kind of raise her arms and go, "Ah!" Like it looked like almost like a cutscene within the movie, as opposed to an organic part of the movie. And that always took me out. Not just because of the scare, but just because of how artificial it looked within the scene. I liked the movie I liked the monster, the ghost here best when we didn't see her, when she was impacting things, or when you
off screen.
There were moments where like you would hear her like crying or wailing in another room, and like that was super effective for me.
What's going to happen now?
Yeah, definitely one of those moments where if we can't see it, it, you know, maybe it works a little better. You know, maybe we get to imagine it a little bit more. We have to sort of like you know, fill in the gaps ourselves. But once we actually fill in the gaps with what the movie gives us, it definitely loses some impact. But I think I think we have a movie here that it feels like is strangely stronger than either of us would have ever expected. And so I don't know that that's going to be something that any general audience might pick up on. But I do think that it's at least surprising for us as movie fans to be able to see this movie that surprised us. We didn't love it, but you know, we liked it, and that's way better than it had any right to do.
I'll say this without giving too much away. This movie is going to probably keep me interested in future movies. Like you mentioned Conjuring 3 by this director. Yeah, I'll see it. I want to see maybe what he does with another another title kind of in this genre. One that's already got some heft behind it, right? With the Conjuring and the Conjuring 2 and the Annabelle and all that stuff. So I want to see what this director is going to do with the next Conjuring movie already. Even though going into this movie, I'm like, oh, I'm tired of this kind of movie. We've just seen The Nun, which I thought pales in comparison to this. I thought this one was a step above The Nun, at least for me.
Oh yeah.
Yes. But you know, so I was kind of losing my excitement for these movies, but this one kind of rekindled it a little bit, maybe breathed a little life back in. So I'm back on board, and we'll talk about what that maybe means in spoilers a little bit.
You know, I think that's actually a really good point, Jim. You know, I think there are some things that we've been dancing around a little bit, some things that we've, you know, that probably more astute listeners have picked up on.
Have already given away.
We've maybe given up the ghost. But you know, we haven't out and out said anything, and I think now is our opportunity to do so. So before we segue over to spoilers, Jim, do you have any other non-spoilery points that you'd like to get across?
No, I don't. I do remember a little bit of stuff about the soundtrack. Early on in the movie, there were some needle drops, some music drops in this movie that I thought worked really well. And then, of course, as the plot developed, that kind of went to the wayside, unfortunately. I like when a movie can incorporate some relevant music that of the period that it's in, to be effective. And I thought this movie did that in a couple of spots early on. And then then unfortunately, I think the plot got in the way and wasn't able to do that later on.
Speaking of music, before we go to spoilers, I do want to mention this. You had mentioned in the beginning of the episode that this got a song stuck in your head. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you meant by that?
Of course, it's My Llorona, and the whole ride to the movie and back. Brad and I are both like humming along with
dun, dun, dun,
My
dun,
Llorona,
dun.
trying to come up with alternate lyrics for My Llorona that we could maybe sing on the podcast. Sorry to break it to you, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to come up with anything that's suitable for publication. So,
I mean, that's a bummer. You'll have to share those inappropriate lyrics with me later, because I know that you've got an absolute knack for those song parodies.
If any listeners of the show can come up with some clever, La Llorona related lyrics to the tune of My Llorona, maybe I'll consider giving a special prize.
Ooh.
Or at least a mention on the show.
Yes, bring those on. If we've got a song parody, someone's written something or wants to write something or record themselves singing something, send it our way. Just
put it in comments on Facebook or on Twitter, and you'll definitely get a mention on the next show, and we'll probably read your lyrics. I tell you what, I will sing the lyrics. Ooh. If you come up with one. I will sing the lyrics to the tune of My Llorona.
So I'm expecting good things, because I absolutely want to hear Jim sing on air. I don't know that we've had that before.
Yeah, you don't.
So this is a good time for us to pop that musical cherry, Jim. Okay. But with that, we're also going to dive right into spoiler talk. This is the warning for everybody. I'll be rambling for a few minutes just to give everyone ample time to do what they need to do. But we're going to be talking spoilers for the next several minutes. So come back in 15 minutes or so. YouTube followers, if you're following along with us live, I'll post on chat when it's safe to come back. If you're listening on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, you can check the show notes and you'll be able to see the timestamp for when we move on to the next section. But either way, we are about to talk spoilers right now, and I've given plenty of warnings. So Jim, spoil something for me. What do you got?
Well, I'll spoil what I was not spoiled about going into this movie, and it surprised me, and I'm glad I wasn't spoiled. This movie ended up being a bona fide entry into the Conjuring verse. That with the Warrens and the Annabelle, the Conjuring. Is Insidious part of that, or Ouija? Are they part of those?
They're not. They're part of the same like film movement, but they're not part of the same shared universe.
Okay. And this movie, I believe, really is, because the priest who plays is it Father Pedro? I'm not sure what his name is. It's Father Perez. Tony Amendola is the same man of the cloth that's in, I think, the Annabelle movies.
Yeah, he's in Annabelle.
I'm sure. And he also mentions in this movie, he mentions working with the Warrens at one time, very briefly. I think right around the middle of the movie, he mentions it. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, it didn't even dawn on me, because I saw the actor and I'm like, where have I seen him play a priest before? And it didn't dawn on me. And then when he mentioned the Warrens, I'm like, holy shit, this is it was kind of like a big reveal or twist for me, because I didn't know going in. But maybe other astute people like you will probably knew that going into the movie, but I had no clue that this was part of the Conjuring verse, and it was a pleasant surprise to find out during the movie that it was.
Yeah, I think for me it was one of those things where I recognized the dude, and so I figured that there would be some sort of connection there. The film actually goes right out and says it. Yeah, you mentioned the Warrens. You mentioned, of course, he's he's had some experience with this sort of thing before.
Mhm.
And also, there's a cutscene where it shows briefly, like, and then there was this one time with this doll, and you see him walking with Annabelle under his arm. And to me, that was probably for me personally, this is definitely me carrying my baggage into the film with me. That was a low point of the film because it reminded me of a movie franchise that I like a lot less. It reminded me of something I had a lot less fun with. And it also reminded me that I think it's in like 2 months, like the next Annabelle movie is actually coming out.
As a matter of fact, they played a trailer. They played a trailer for the Annabelle movie in front of this, and I didn't put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah, and then I mean the trailer for the next one, it just doesn't look good to me either. Like it's just like more like, a doll is sitting there and then a jump scare happens, and that just, doesn't do things for me. So the fact that we got to see that introduced here, I don't know, for me it probably had the opposite effect. I think you said that it sort of like made you more excited for like the others to come, and I can definitely see that. If you see like a stronger example within a franchise, it can sort of like relight that spark or get you enthused again. But for me, it actually made me think that this is more of an outlier than anything, and it made me sort of wish this was more of a standalone, so it didn't have to carry sort of the carry the other films as sort of an albatross.
Right. It was good to see the movie, branch out a little bit in terms of its characters and like the diversity, I guess, of its characters. So I give the movie credit for that. Although people were complaining online about Linda Cardellini playing, I don't know the whole story behind, is she has, this, I think the movie is about, so the movie starts off with, in Mexico, I think it's in Mexico, where a young mother that goes crazy and murders her kids. And then I think she immediately regrets it and she dies. And then her spirit comes back and is trying to take other kids to drown them too. I don't know. It's not super clear what the motivations are, but it did tie it back to that. And so the families that are affected by this, that are haunted by this creature, ghost, whatever you want to call it, of the mother La Llorona, are Hispanic families. And I don't know if Linda Cardellini is Hispanic, and there was some little dust up I saw somewhere about, some critic says, well, it's too bad they had Linda Cardellini play this mom or something like that.
And I think there's like, there are arguments to be made for kind of like how you cast films and what you do there. I think, not that I have a leg to stand on, I'm not part of that community. But the character itself is, just to sort of clear the air on this, like, the character herself is not portrayed as Hispanic in the film. Her character's name is Anna Tate Garcia, and so her husband. We got to see some photos of him on the table, and he was a Hispanic male, and like their sons were, or the son and daughter, definitely carry that heritage as well. So I think that's where the hyphenated Garcia comes from, and so it's a blended family is what we're
and they weren't trying to pass her off, I guess, as a Hispanic woman, I don't think.
Right. This wasn't like Emma Stone playing like a native Hawaiian in Aloha, or like Scarlett Johansson, the Asian ninja badass. This is a character who is playing, this is a Caucasian Italian character playing a Caucasian Italian character who happened to marry a Hispanic Mexican male. So I mean, no foul play there, I would say.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about the Raphael character played by Tuco, or Raymond Cruz.
Yeah, can we just call him Tuco? Because like my new headcanon is that this is actually Tuco.
In a lot of these movies, you get this character, right? You get the medium. I mean, this goes back to like movies before Poltergeist, right? You have this medium who's kind of on the same wavelength as these spirits or ghosts, and they come onto the scene to kind of help the family out of this jam and keep them safe. In this movie's case, it was this character Rafael Vera, And I kind of, yes, we've seen this character 100 times, but I thought he brought something a little bit fresh to this character. Like he wasn't like the super stoic, like all business, like, oh, we must get this creature out of your house. Like he was kind of almost like a regular dude who has done this a few times, but you could also sense that he knew he was up against a badass this time. And there was some humor in that situation that I thought they played pretty well. So I did like the treatment of that character and the way it was played well. I don't know what you thought, how it came across to you.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I like this character. I don't know that I 100% love this character, which I mean feels like it's my refrain for the movie. I feel like there was an interesting character there. This guy who embodies the I used to be a priest, but while I've still turned towards God, I've turned away from the church, and now I'm doing my own thing because
how did you find
all these
me?
things out there? And so he's a he's a spirit healer. He uses both his power of conviction from his belief in God, as well as some different like folk remedies between like the equivalent of sprinkling a salt barrier to keep spirits away, but in this case, like the wood of the trees that oversaw the original crime, and using incense and censers and smoke to help ward away evil spirits and things along those lines. And I thought all that was really cool. I do think that there was some stuff in there that was a little hokey, like they made like an anti-venom from her tears, which I thought was kind of silly. It was maybe not silly in and of itself, but it was silly like how it was kind of built up and then it became kind of a nothing burger.
Oh, wink, kind of thing.
Yeah. And the character himself, like it seemed like he sort of bounced between a few different characterizations. And that's not the actor's fault. Just kind of the script at some point needed him to be a little warmer. At some point needed him to be a little more stoic, and they just rolled with it. But this is the type of character who, if they ever did another one of these and we got to see a sequel that starred this character doing a little bit more, I wouldn't say no to that. I think that there's some fertile ground here for this character to, hell, if we've gotten now, if we're on the fourth movie about that fucking doll, then I think we can get a second Raphael movie.
As a matter of fact, I thought that I got a little bit of a vibe between the two characters, even though the movie really didn't play it up very much between the Raphael character and the Anna character. Like there was maybe some little spark there. She was a widow. I don't know what his situation was. I really didn't get into that, but it felt like there was some chemistry between them in the movie.
Yeah, I think that to the movie's strength, like I think a weaker version of this movie would have leaned into this as a traditional, like, now I can move on now that I found this guy. Instead, it plays it as, I think you as the audience member can sort of put in there, like, was there some attraction between them? Is it just a friendship? Was it just the necessity of the situation? Does it even matter? I think you can put any of those different reads on it just the same, and it doesn't change their dynamic. And I think that, again, to the credit of the actors, is it is one of the strengths of this film.
I wanted to talk about we mentioned the effects before. The effects on the creature, the monster, the spirit, whatever you want to, La Llorona, especially when they got in on her face, it was really, really, really rough. I thought the makeup and whatever effects, they just didn't have the effects budget apparently there was one scene, I think the death scene of La Llorona, when she kind of gets stabbed by the cross.
Yeah,
like that's what does her in, and like there's a swirling, and she like basically disintegrates and flies apart and turns into goo or something. That was kind of cool, but you could tell that was the only thing they had in the special effects budget. The rest of it was almost all practical effects, which is to the movie's credit if they're done right. But I think there was some. They could have tightened up some of those effects, and maybe like you said, Will, I don't know if you're kind of on that line in this movie where you may be better off if you don't show a lot of the creature, But then again, you're going to get the people who like, oh, the movie never showed the creature. This was boring. So you're kind of riding that line a little bit.
Yeah, it's really hard. I think you're right. Like, I wanted to actually see more practical effects. Part of that's just because that's just the type of horror fan that I am. Like, give me them good horror practical effects. If you're gonna do computer generated, which is cool, make them look sharp. And I think that they sort of split the difference here in some ways that weren't necessarily flattering. I don't know. Now, it is interesting to see this particular piece of folklore on screen. Like, this is not an original bit of mythology that was created for this film. The Weeping Woman is a big part of, like, Mexican folklore and also like Central American as well. In fact, I was looking through some things, and this is the counting like television appearances, like in like episodic, like Creature of the Week type things, movies dating back to like the 30s and like other types of media. This is like the 14th or 15th appearance of La Llorona in terms of like televised screening. Certainly the most prominent in terms of like in front of mass audiences that I can think of, say for like the first antagonist of this TV show Supernatural was based off the La Llorona myth. But this is probably the most notable one. So it'll be interesting to see how many people, I don't know, like follow up, like learn something or use this as as an excuse to sort of go down the rabbit hole. Like, I think that's usually the biggest benefit of something that's pulled from actual mythology or folklore is like, well, what else can I learn? What else can I dig deep on? So that's something that I've got as a takeaway.
Yeah, maybe that's something I'll look into a little bit too, because they're going to get another one of these movies probably, right? Yeah. I don't know if it'll be La Llorona 2 or whatever, but one of the things
my dogs aren't happy. Keep going.
La Llorona.
That's what it is. They're coming for him.
One of the things that kind of pleased me in the movie, and in sounds like a sadistic way, but it's not. It's just I like movies that have the gumption to follow through on some things. At the beginning of the movie, there's two kids that are being stalked by the Weeping Woman, and it's a pretty horrific scene when they're like taken. I thought that scene was pretty good in I don't know if they were in like a hotel or something, and then the kids end up dead. Like they actually killed off the kids, and the movie establishes its stakes that way, right? It didn't. Not that I'm happy kids.
Now I know. Killed. No, Jim. That's why you like this movie so much. You're like, those little fuckers bit it. Yeah,
they did. But and that to me that cements the stakes. That makes the movie all that more suspenseful to me, because I know that that danger is there and it could happen again. So I'm glad the movie went in that direction and didn't like save those kids at the last moment. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean that part of it worked for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, this is a movie that that didn't pull a few of its punches that it probably could have, and so that was satisfying. Again, this isn't the type of horror film that goes all in. There's nothing here that's gonna like give you bad dreams or like kind of fuck you up for life, but it doesn't need to. This is the type of movie that I think gives you that good sort of like supernatural fun, jump scary time at the movies, and then you can like go about your day afterwards. And I think there's a place for this type of horror.
Well, look at it this way: if you were rating movies on a scale of dead children, this movie gets a 4.
Yeah, this movie gets a 4, and like that's
something.
That's 4 more than a lot of movies.
That's right.
So as Jim would like to call it, it's a good start.
It's a good dead children movie.
Well, this was a fun discussion. I think we could probably like talk about Curse of La Llorona all night, but realistically, this isn't the only thing that we've seen this week. So let's take a few minutes to talk about some of the other things that we've seen that really have us jazzed. So, Jim, it's time for plugs. You're up first. What's got you excited?
Well, mine is a plug of a movie to start out with, and then I'm going to kind of morph into a plug of something else. The movie I want to plug is an older one from 1999 that I know people are going to be incredulous when I say that I've never seen this movie before, but it's The Virgin Suicides, which I caught on a streaming service this weekend, just kind of because, Brad had work commitments, and I'm like, oh, what can I watch? And I came across this one. Like, this is a title I've been hearing for a long time. It's directed by Sofia Coppola, who I really like. It's got a young Kirsten Dunst, Josh Hartnett in it. Unfortunately, it has James Woods in it too, which I kind of had to cringe when I saw him because he has a questionable social media presence at the moment. But yeah, I watched this movie, and also, oh, by the way, it also has Kathleen Turner in it. This movie, I really, really love this movie. Like, I was kicking myself for not having seen it before. Will, I'm pretty sure you've probably seen it. The Virgin Suicides. Yeah. I don't know how many times you've seen it, but I really dug this movie, and and I'm thinking, wow, for 1999, this seems like it was a fresh perspective, right? You have a woman's perspective on like kind of like a twisted, dark coming of age teen coming of age movie. Dark comedy is in this. It's got some great elements of drama and sadness, but it's also kind of funny in spots. The Virgin Suicides, and you can catch it right now. Probably on a lot of streaming platforms, but I wanted to also plug the platform that I watched it on, right?
Oh, good.
And that's Canopy. I don't know if many people have heard of Canopy, to be honest. We've all heard of, Amazon Prime and Netflix and Hulu and Vudu, maybe even Vudu. Now the Criterion channel is out. But there's a service called Canopy. It's spelled with a K, Kanopy, that I kind of got turned on to. And what it is it's kind of sponsored by the Coalition of Public Libraries. And it's like when you go to a public library, which I haven't been into a public library in years and years and years to get a book, but you can also rent DVDs and Blu-rays and all kinds of movies. And basically what this is like an online version of borrowing movies. You just go in and it's a free movie service. And all you need is a library card, a valid library card and I think most libraries, most city and county libraries are tied into the system for Canopy. You download the app, sign up for it, got your library card. If it's valid, you tie it to your library and then off you go. You get, and I forget how many movies you can watch a month. I think it's like 10 or 15 or something like that.
There's a limit on it, but
there is. But it's all free.
Free.
Yeah, it's free. So I've already used my limit for April. Like I've just the movie selection on here is incredible. Like I mentioned The Virgin Suicides. They've got some older movies, but they've got some newer ones too. Hearts Beat Loud, The Miseducation of Cameron Post, Moonlight, Eighth Grade from last year that we talked, all these movies we talked about on the show. Just incredible movies, like Mustang is another one we watched a while ago. Documentaries, romance. It's got Hereditary on here. Hereditary's on here. The Witch is on here. So Let the Right One In.
Good pedigree there, yeah.
Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. Like it's got a really broad spectrum of movies from like mainstream, popular mainstream movies to some like art house films to some classics, foreign movies. It's a great service. I can't say enough good things about it. It's become like probably my favorite streaming service right now. And if I hadn't run up against my limit for this month, I have to wait till May, I think, to get back in and watch a movie. But I check it out. It's Canopy at canopy.com, Canopy with a K. Check it out.
Yeah, that's a hell of a plug, and I'd like to. I mean, honestly, I'll go to my plug in a second, but I think yours demands a little bit of extra time, just because it's such a good one. It's not just for a movie, but it's for this like incredible service. I think that I hear a lot of people say that like they just kind of can't keep up with like the streaming platforms. Like I've got to pay Netflix, I've got to pay Hulu, I've got to pay for my Amazon Prime subscription, and then if I rent movies, and then there's Redbox, and then I've got Criterion Channel, but now there's this Disney Plus, and now I've got the CBS app, and how do I keep up with all of it? And it's true. There's a lot of ways that you can stretch your dollar super thin, and Canopy is something that all you have to do is go down to your library, register to get a library card, which takes no time, and they send you all of the information for the digital stuff. At least mine did, like via email. You click the link, log in, and you go. I signed up around the time of the Oscars. I was on that bid, remember, to like, I've got to see them all. I've got to Pokemon, got to catch them all, with every movie that was nominated in every single category. And there was one movie that was eluding me, and it was this documentary called Fathers and Sons. And it was only playing in a couple like super select theaters, but it was also streaming for free on Canopy. So when I found that out, it's like, all right, cool, it's time to pull the trigger and check this out. And then I saw just the wide breadth of other films that are on there. So Jim, that is a hell of a plug for something that's any movie fan should be on Canopy and should be using up those credits, and should be like just watching all of these amazing movies. And to your point, Virgin Suicides, that movie slaps. It's really good.
Loved it.
For me, the movie that I would like to plug is a sci-fi drama horror movie that I got the chance to see in theaters this last week, and
I think I know what it might be.
I think. Any guess? You want to guess?
Is it the Claire Denis movie?
You ding, you got it. Yeah, it's the Claire Denis movie High Life, starring Robert Pattinson, who I need to just like, I've got to say this every so often. Like, anyone that's like, man, I hate like Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart because of those fucking Twilight movies. Like, you're sleeping on probably two of the best actors and actresses of their kind of age, of that generation, because they are both absolutely stellar and put in amazing work in things like Robert Pattinson does in High Life. This is a movie about this father and this daughter who are in this like deep space station in isolation with one another, just sort of surviving on this ship. And through the course of the movie, you kind of find out what happens to them from the starting point of just this man and this baby on the space station. Like, compelling, cool, what happened? You get to sort of see back in the past and see what happened to like get them to the circumstance that they're in. And you also get to see kind of some of the stuff that happens thereafter. This is a very artsy movie, which isn't going to sit with a lot of people. There's going to be people who are going to say like, nothing happened in this movie, which is absolutely wrong. There's a lot of stuff that happens in this movie, but it is one of those movies that uses the, air quotes, like deliberately paced pacing, which isn't for everyone.
Is it better than Passengers?
Oh God, yes, it's way better than Passengers, and way less problematic, even though way more fucked up things happen. Because what you don't kind of get from the trailers is there's some pretty fucked up things that happen to the characters in this movie. There are some supporting cast members who I think it's important to know about because they're really, really damn good. Probably, I think the case could be made for Juliette Binoche as one of just the best actresses working, period, and she is in this movie. She's, this is someone who she was in like Clouds of Sils Maria. She was in the Three Colors movies. She was in, gosh, what else has she been in? Els. She was in, she was most recently in Ghost in the Shell, but whatever. But anyway, she's just an absolutely great actress. And she's so great in here, and she gets to do some shit that she's like, I've not really seen out of her before. Also in this movie is Andre Benjamin, who you might know as the guy from Outkast, the musical group, the all right, shake it like a Polaroid picture. Like, he's in this really, really solid role. Mia Goth is in this. this is a really cool movie. It doesn't 100% land like the ending and a few of the scenes in there, and there's a couple of moments that are a little bit head tilting. So this isn't like a 5 out of 5, gotta watch it type thing, but I quite enjoyed this. I think there's some interesting ideas on display here, and I like the way Claire Denis sort of like looks at all of these different characters and this weird circumstance that she's put them in. I can't think of a lot of films that feel like High Life. So yeah, it's a recommend for me.
So less of a like an actiony sci-fi and more like a heady sci-fi, kind of like in the vein of Annihilation, maybe? Or
it's not quite as like obtuse as Annihilation, in that I think Annihilation, you have to step away from it and think like, what did all of this mean? Or let me rephrase that. I think you have to step away from that and first, before you can try to diagnose what Annihilation means, you have to sort of figure out, okay, what the hell just happened here? And this doesn't have that part of it. Like, there's nothing in this movie where you have to wonder like what the hell just happened. You're still gonna have to do some thought about, okay, what was the film trying to say? What does this mean? What are the themes? Did this feeling of isolation, like, did it suffocate? Did it liberate? Like, what did I learn from this movie? Like, there's definitely some thought to go into it, but I don't think that the actual like what happens in the film is going to be necessarily the confusing point for anyone.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, but
it's in limited, right?
It's in limited, so it's one of those ones. Like, honestly, what happens with this type of movie? It's probably going to play only like the bigger cities. It might spread out to a few others, but if not, just look for this one on streaming here in a few months. There's the turnaround time between limited release and streaming platform is getting narrower and narrower these days. I think that's become a more of a valid release strategy, is like, let's get this in front of people ASAP. So look for it. It's called High Life, and if you see it and if you loved it, if you hated it, if you wondered what the fuck you just watched, send me a note. I would love to talk with whoever about this movie.
Awesome. Can't wait to see it. It's on my list to see. We'll have to see when it pops up somewhere on Canopy or something.
Well, yeah, that's a good call. So as we look to wrap up, I think it's going to be important for people to know where they can interact with us and interact with the show. So first of all, you can find more episodes of the Movie Bears podcast by following us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter at MB Podcast. Jim does a great job of sort of keeping movie news and keeping Buzz up to date on that platform. You can find us on YouTube, on Spotify, on iTunes, on Stitcher, or by visiting moviebearspodcast.com. You can find me personally on Facebook. Just search for William Lindis. You can find me on Twitter at Whatever Cove, and you can find me on Letterboxd, where I just log all the films that I watch. So look for me any of those places. And Jim, where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, you can find me also on Twitter at JJPOUTWEST. That's at JJP Out West. And you can also find me right on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico. I'm there to talk about whatever, mostly movies on Twitter, but anything in the world on Facebook.
Wonderful. Hey, you know what? That's it for this episode. We made it through. We were not possessed by any like weeping ghost women. We weren't like snapped out of existence by Thanos. We made it through.
We didn't get spoiled. We didn't get spoiled on Endgame.
No, we've made it through. Anyone that joined us hopefully didn't get spoiled by Endgame if you were just like listening with us instead of reading Twitter. Right. So this was a safe space for all of us, and we got through episode 319. We are that much closer to Avengers Endgame, which actually is going to be our next major review. So tune in next time. Episode 320 is going to be all about Avengers Endgame. We cannot wait to discuss it with Jim, with Brad, and with what's probably going to be like the flood of listeners that we're going to have listening to live, just because it's it's the biggie for the year, right?
That's right.
But yeah,
it's going to be a fun one.
Oh gosh, so much so. Well, until next time, have fun at the movies, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.